I saw this, and we had Merrill on. I love Merrill Reese's comments, too, when I tried to get him on the other day. He goes, listen here, I can't miss a golf shot here. Can't do it now, okay? I can't miss this golf shot, Dan, so I can't miss any holes. I don't want any. Okay, it's not going to happen here. This is a tournament that matters, too, so I can't miss any golf shots. So I absolutely love that when he said that. But last week, Merrill Reese was, and the great folks at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, who I'm very close to. My uncle's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, obviously. Some of my dearest friends are in the Pro Football. I've been there. I've got a lifetime pass because of being a former player to go to the Hall of Fame. And they got a section in there for the Rozelle Award. It's some of the greatest broadcasters of all time. If John Facenda's in it, you have Harry Callis. You have some of the greatest voices in the history of Philadelphia sports. Think about what I'm saying to you. Harry Callis and John Facenda. I mean, and then you see something in your phone, and you're like this, Canton, Ohio, and this is Merrill. I'm just assuming this is Canton, Ohio. Canton, Ohio. Must be a life insurance company. He picks it up, and it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and it's John and the guys. Let's bring in the legendary voice. Hopefully I portrayed that right, Merrill Reese. Hopefully I portrayed that right and how it went down.
You did with one exception. With one exception. Harry Callis is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Oh.
He is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. See, baseball's version of the Pete Rozelle Award is, I believe it's called the Ford Frick Award.
It is.
And that's what Harry is in.
How about all those men? Were they actively working still when you got into the business?
Boy.
Wasn't Facenda still doing NFL film?
Yes, of course. Yes, John Facenda was, yes. And, boy, I would imagine John Madden was coaching.
Yeah. John Madden was and yeah, that's right. John Madden was coaching back in because John quit in like 81, something around there. Then he got into CBS and he went into broadcasting. But for you, coming up during that era where Harry Callis is talking Phillies baseball, Facenda, who was I think was a sportscaster.
No, he was
on the news.
He was a news anchor. You know, he would finish every newscast by saying, "Do have a nice night tonight and a pleasant day tomorrow." That was John. He was on Channel 10 in Philadelphia for many, many years. My grandmother loved him.
What does it feel to be in that room and in that group now that you're being honored with such a prestigious award? Because the Rozelle Award is a prestigious award. And Merrill, I know you're a humble man, but you're in a conversation with those men.
I don't know. I am humbled by it. I was shocked. And I am humbled by it. The funny thing, Dan, was in 2016, Jeffrey Lurie called me and told me that I was selected for the Eagles Hall of Fame. And I was happy. I was thrilled. My reaction was one of joy. And it was, I guess I kind of figured that after broadcasting the Eagles for so many years that eventually I would sneak in there. But this is something I never considered. It was not on my bucket list. It was unattainable. It was out of my mind. I never thought about it. And when Jim Porter called me from the Hall of Fame, I was driving out to golf for a change. I was driving, and all of a sudden he called me, and I see on the screen Canton, Ohio, and I'm thinking, who do I know in Canton, Ohio? And I answer the phone, and he said, "Congratulations. And you have won the Pete Rozelle Award, and you're into the Hall of Fame." All I could do was cry. I mean, I was so emotional. I could not believe it. And then he told me, "We're going to release it tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So please, we don't want it on social media. We do not want anyone to know until 11. You can only tell your wife." So I called my wife. And again, she answered the phone, and I am emotional. I'm crying. She thought I was in a car accident.
Oh my God.
And I'm finally yelling, "No, Hall of Fame!" So it was crazy.
Well, who was the first person you thought of when you realized what the call was, and you got the opportunity now to have yourself enshrined in Canton. Who was the first person you thought of?
Who was the first person I thought of? I mean, other than my wife and my son and my daughter, they were the first. They were the first people I thought of that they were going to be proud of their.
Hopefully, we're able to connect here again here, because this is great stuff here, man. I mean, you know, you're enshrined in Canton, and I got to tell you, Merrill, I'm so thrilled for you, because it's such a hallowed place. My family, we have family members in that, and I wanted to get moments from you. What was the greatest Eagle moment for you as a broadcaster?
Oh, that's easy. That one I can answer quite easily. That was February 4th, 2018. Or 2018,
Yeah.
after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And that moment when they won that Super Bowl, oh my goodness. Oh, I mean, that was it. I mean, for years, Paul Domwich of the Inquirer, the week before the Super Bowl, did a whole interview, and he said to me, will you write down a couple of lines, because it's going to last forever, of if the Eagles win, what you will say? And I said, no. I said, if it happens, it's going to come from my heart. And the genesis of it really is, for years, Angelo Cataldi would have me as a guest on the morning show from time to time. And he'd say, I want the Eagles to win the Super Bowl for you, for all you've gone through for all these years. And I said to him, and I was not being disingenuous, I said, Angelo, I've had miracles in the Meadowlands. I've had great things to describe. I said, I want it for the fans, because these fans come out there in any kind of weather. These fans, some of whom get second mortgages so they can buy season tickets. They spend their last minutes, their last dollar around the holidays to get their kids' Eagles jersey and memorabilia. I want it for them. So when it occurred, first of all, Dan, I was scared to death. And the reason I was scared to death was not because I thought Tom Brady was going to complete a Hail Mary to win the game. Because I think Aaron Rodgers has that kind of arm. I never thought Tom Brady had that kind of Hail Mary ability. Not that he wasn't the GOAT, but of course, in pure arm strength. But I was nervous because, the newer the stadium, the worse our seats are, because now those seats are super boxes and whatever. So at US Bank Stadium, we were seated in the exact opposite corner of the end zone. So that play was going to culminate 110 yards away from where we were seated. And that we can't use monitors for something like that anymore, because thanks to Janet Jackson, everything's on the line. So Brady goes back and he starts to stumble forward. And as he lets go of the ball, inexplicably, everything slows down. I'm looking at it like it's one of these NFL films in slow motion, and I see it come down and I see it knocked around and it hits the ground. And I look up at the clock, and all I can say is it's incomplete. The game is over. Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. And then I said, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin. So that was the crowning moment.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's an iconic moment in a city known for passionate sports fans. And you mentioned, and I'll take the Super Bowl out of this, would one of the most distinctive moments, because I heard it the other day when I heard that you were inducted or going to be inducted with the honor. I went back and I listened to some of your calls, and I went back in the Miracle in the Meadowlands. Funny, my uncle was the general manager at the time of the Giants when that whole thing went down. And I heard your voice. Of all the games you called and all the moments that you called, would you say that that moment was the most improbable moment that you had in any of your broadcasting? Was when something was so, and Vermeil being the guy too, who always preached, never give up, never surrender. And there it was, never surrender. And Herman Edwards picks it up, takes it in. Pisarcik drops the ball, goes in. I think Zonka ran into somebody, and there you were. It was like you couldn't believe it. Was that the most dramatic moment in your broadcasting career?
I would rank that number 2. That was November 19th, 1978. I would rank that number 2 because that game was over, and all of a sudden that occurred.
Over.
Crazy. But number 1, because the actual play was more dynamic, was December 19th, 2010. And that was at the Meadowlands. And that was where the Eagles were so bad in the first half that I said at halftime, the score is the Giants 23. The Eagles are still back at the hotel. And then Michael Vick put together the greatest 30 minutes of quarterbacking I ever saw to bring them back from the dead. A touchdown pass to Brent Selleck, an onside kick by David Akers, recovered by Riley Cooper, a touchdown pass to Jeremy Maclin, a quarterback draw by Michael Vick, and suddenly it's even. And the Eagles, who couldn't stop anybody, stopped the Giants at that time, stopped Eli and company, and the Giants had to punt. And Mike Quick said there is no way they are putting this ball to Deshaun Jackson with 3 seconds on the clock. And inexplicably, Matt Dodge's punt came down, and Deshaun muffed it. And then he picked it up. And then the Red Sea parted. And somewhere downfield, Jason Avant leveled somebody with a block. And Deshaun just kept running and running and running. And then he stops at the 1-yard line and pirouettes and does a dance. And I'm saying, I don't care what he does, just get into the end zone. And he did. That was the most incredible comeback I have ever seen.
The players that you've covered, was there one player that you enjoyed covering more so? And I know you have great affiliations and respect for everyone that you've ever covered, but was there one guy that every time he stepped on the field, something maybe brought a great call out of you? Maybe it was just the way the fans acted towards him. Was there one guy that you enjoyed talking about more on the air than anyone else?
Yes, the most, well, I'm not saying he was the best player I've ever been with.
Right, no.
But the most exciting player in my 100 years, Randall Cunningham.
Wow.
You just never knew what was going to happen. I mean, he got off a 91-yard punt. He jumped over people. There's a picture in my office of Randall hurdling the entire Giants defensive line. You never knew whether he was, I don't think he knew what he was going to do next. Randall Cunningham, he was instant excitement. But there were other brilliant performers like Brian Westbrook and Shady McCoy. I mean, the great running backs, Wilbur Montgomery, those guys, the great wide receivers, Harold Carmichael and Mike Quick and Deshaun, and the two they have right now, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. I mean, they were amazing. I mean, there have been great players at every position. Now, if your next question is going to be, and I'm reading your mind.
Yes.
Of all the players you've covered as an Eagle, in my tenure, who was the greatest Eagle of all time, or from 1977 to today? That would be Reggie White. That would be Reggie White. He was right there with the best who ever played defense. And number 2 would be Brian Dawkins. Those two.
Wow.
But Reggie number 1. Reggie was the best defensive end I ever saw.
The first year he came into the league coming from the USFL, I think he had like 9 games, 12 games, and he had 21 sacks.
Yeah.
It was like he was getting 2-3 sacks a game, and it looked like he was so far advanced from everybody. And I was in college at the time at Miami, and then obviously when I got in Jerome and I would watch him, and he came from the Memphis Showboats, I believe.
Yes.
And he got to Philadelphia when they had the supplemental draft for him, and we could not. He didn't wear. I don't think he wore his traditional numbers first year. I think it was
Well, he
a
was
different
91 the first year, and then he became
91. Then he went to 92 the second year, correct?
Yeah. But the funny thing is, there was only one other player I used to say this about, how he would give offensive coordinators nightmares all week, that you never know where he was coming from, but you knew he was coming. And that was the Giants' great Lawrence Taylor. And I felt the same way about Reggie. They moved him around. You never knew what he was going to do next. He totally dominated a game.
Coaches, you've had a very colorful list of guys to have a post and pregame and maybe even an in-game conversation with. So you get Vermeil, who Randy Cross tells me, one of the most intense people you've ever seen. Don't let the California guy fool you, because he was a very fiery guy. He didn't believe in taking time off, but he was also a really emotional guy. And if you knew anything about Dick Vermeil, you understood it came from a place of love. Then you had, of course, you had Ray Rhodes. You also had
Buddy.
Andy, Buddy. I mean, of all these coaches, who did you enjoy and who did you have more fun with interviewing the most in your time since 77 as a coach for the Eagles?
My favorite is Dick, because in the dictionary, if you go to see, under the word charisma, there's a picture of Dick Vermeil. I never saw anybody who communicated with his team the way Dick Vermeil did. But there have been so many. I had a lot of fun with Buddy. Buddy was controversial. I love Buddy. You never knew what he was going to say next, but he was great to me, and he took me into his confidence, and he said things that I would never repeat on the air because it would get him fired sooner than he eventually was. In fact, when he was fired after a loss to the Washington team, and he called his own press conference that Monday morning, and as we all came into his den, he turned around and he said, "Well, it's the first time anyone's ever been fired for winning." And then later he bought a racehorse and he named it Fired for Winning. Buddy was the most remarkable. He was funny. He was great. And I loved Ray. Ray was a laugh a minute if you got to know him. He was terrific. He was great. I loved Ray. And then Andy was a terrific coach. Andy's Hall of Fame bound, you know that.
Oh yeah.
And a wonderful person. I loved Andy. And loved Doug. Doug was terrific. Nobody realized that Doug would be the kind of coach that he was, but he was a terrific person. He gave me the most inside look at the game than any coach did, because I knew him for 19 years. By the time he became the Eagles coach, I knew him when he was brought in here as the sacrificial lamb until Donovan McNabb was ready to play. And he'd go out there and get beaten up every week. So I knew Doug really well. And Doug shared things with me. I could go into Doug's office and he'd tell me the gadget plays they were going to use that week. He'd draw them up for me. And then I'd look like a genius when I could describe them and see them coming. But he was a great friend. Is a great friend. I could pick up the phone when we get off the air and call Doug and have a great chat with him. He's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Couple last questions for you, Merrill. Merrill, for me as a broadcaster, I've been doing this now for about 36 years. I've been on the air, and I was on the radio for 32. And I'll say this to you, that I had more fun when I didn't know what I was doing when I was younger. And I was going through and I was learning, and I was learning the business, and I was learning my mistakes. And it just seemed that the journey was a little bit now. I found out the more I'm more like me, the more I resonate with folks. Back then, I was still trying to find, when you were younger in your broadcasting career and you were getting your feet wet in 77, 78, and that time, how do you look at your earlier time as a broadcaster compared to now? Did you enjoy it at the beginning? Do you enjoy it more now?
Dan, aside from dreaming about being a quarterback when I was 10, once I realized that 5'8" was it, But once I realized that this is my dream job, and I have loved play-by-play, and I have loved football forever. So I did enjoy it from the very beginning, and I enjoy it as much now. I love every single second of it. However, when you're talking about the difference in those early years, I was careful in the sense that I would not be overly critical because I did not want to be the former voice of the Eagles. And I know the realities of what you can say and what you cannot say. And even to this day,
Oh, yes.
I'm not going to take anybody apart or call for anybody's job or say anything unkind. However, when the Eagles played the Giants in the last game of the regular season last year,
I heard it.
I said, this is not a good football team. And I did not believe for a second that they were going to beat Tampa Bay in the playoffs on that Monday night because they had lost it. They couldn't find it. They had weeks of opportunities to turn it around, and they couldn't. So I'm honest. I feel that my longevity in that booth has given me a feeling of credibility. So people know I love the Eagles as much as they do. I'm not there to hurt the team or belittle anybody, but I have great respect for Eagles fans, and I feel an obligation to be honest with them at all times.
Don't you agree, Merrill, that for you, if you were to give advice to a young aspiring play-by-play guy, it would be what you just said, is to build the equity with the fans up first before you can start being and expanding what you and how you see. Like you said, because when I heard you, I was driving back from my daughter's college and I had you on Sirius XM and I just went like this. He never talks like that on my program. And I go, but he's like, this is not Eagle football. You and Mike were both going back and forth, and it was really like I couldn't believe, and I was like, wow. But to me, it's about building equity up with the fans and with the organization and with the community. When you say that would be some advice that you give, build your equity up before you start going in, slashing and burning.
And also remember that you are not a fan. There are two things you will never hear come out of my mouth, and I have never said it from the very beginning. I have never said we. I have never said us. I talk about the Eagles. Now, does my voice reflect the tenor of the game and what is happening? Of course. At the same time, I feel as if I'm a journalist angling the game to an Eagles fan. In other words, they want to know why the Eagles are beating the Giants or why the Eagles are trailing the Cowboys, not vice versa. You're not part of the team. You may feel it inside. You may love them. You may want them to win, but you are calling the game with as objectively as you possibly can.
Finally, who was your first color analyst that worked with you in the booth?
Well, when I took over with 2 games to go in the 77 season after Charlie Swift suddenly died, Dean Tyler, the program director at WIP, left it up to me. He said, Merrill, go get a color analyst for the last 2 games. And I said, okay. And I called a native Philadelphian who I knew, who I had met at the station, and who was one of my favorite players and one of my favorite people and in the Hall of Fame, the great Herb Adderley.
Oh, my God.
Did the first 2 games with me.
No way.
Yes. Number 26, Green Bay Packers. But Philadelphia's Northeast High School and Michigan State. So I did those first 2 games with her. Now, I didn't know if I would get the game because after the season, I didn't find out until the following March that I was it. So, I mean, I never knew. But Herb was my color man. Then the following season, after I got the games, and was named the play-by-play voice of the Eagles and sports director of WIP, Herb couldn't do them anyhow because he had then in the offseason joined Wayne Harden's Temple coaching staff.
Huh.
So we had auditions, and the person who got the color job for a couple of seasons was a Philadelphia writer, a journalist by the name of Jim Barniak. And when Jim left, for a couple of seasons, Bill Bergey was in the booth. And after Bill Bergey for a couple of seasons came the character of all characters, Stan Walters, the Eagles all-pro left tackle. And Stan was a riot. You never knew what Stan was going to say. We're doing a game against the Cowboys, and Stan is looking at, he's getting angry because there were so many marginal calls and everything went against the Eagles. And Stan Walters says, Tex Schramm has these officials in his pocket. He's a member of the competition committee. He has them in his pocket. And the writer's booth is right next to us. And all of a sudden we hear a pounding on the window, and we look into the glass, and Tex Schramm is standing there showing that there's nothing in his pockets. And he was scheduled to be Stan's halftime guest, and he didn't show up. And what's more, they took Stan off the Cowboys mailing list. And Stan said, good, I don't want to be on it.
Holy cow, I learned so much right there. Are you trying to tell me Merrill Reese is the guy who handed off the PD job to Bill Bigby? Are you the guy that handed that off to him?
What? To Bill? No, Bill. I said Bill Bergey.
Oh, no. What wasn't there a guy by the name of Bigby that was the
Tom Bigby.
Tom Bigby, yeah. Did you hand the PD job off to him?
Hand it off? No. I wasn't ever the PD. I wasn't in position for anybody's job. Tom Bigby hated me. He was the only guy. He hated me.
I hated that guy.
You know why he hated me? And I don't like, he passed away.
I know. I got it.
But you know why he hated me?
Why?
He hated me because he wanted me to get into the booth each week and get into an argument with Stan Walters and become controversial and go back and forth like the morning show does on a talk station. I wouldn't do it. And he really wanted to get rid of me, but the company wouldn't let him. But
I'll tell you what. So I got an opportunity to go to WI.
He said, I don't care if you believe it or not. You say something to start an argument in that booth. I said, I am sorry, I will not do that. Well, then, so he wanted me out, but he didn't. He was program director. He wasn't the company president who said, don't you dare leave him alone. And years later, he apologized to me, believe it or not. But in fact, Angelo Cataldi had it in his contract that Tom Bigby wasn't allowed to talk to him.
He told us. He comes on once a week here on our show, and he told us that because I go, look, Tom Bigby was trying to get me to go, and he wanted me with some sort of light in the booth where, get this, a lot of people don't know this, that he didn't like callers on past a minute or some shit.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. If it's good content, he goes, well, then, Andy Bloom was trying to hire me. Then he ended up getting fired. But I went up to Philly 3 times, and I told Angelo, I go, Angelo, I was supposed to follow you. Like back when Bigby was there, when I first got started in it. And he goes, it was over the light bulb. He goes, I had something in my contract that guy could never talk to me.
Yeah, he did. Now, unfortunately, he could talk to me, but I didn't have to listen.
Well, Merrill, we've been listening for all these years, and congratulations to you and your family. It's a tremendous honor to be enshrined in that building. There's so few that are in that building. It personifies everything that I love about pro football, and the people, the voices of it, the men that played it, to be a part of it like that has to be a thrill for everyone, including your family. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it, and I always enjoy coming on with you.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. God bless, Merrill.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You got it. That is the great Merrill Reese, the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, now being enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. All right, where are we in the like list? I got to take a time out here. Much love to Merrill Reese. Where are we on the like list? Where are we? Please tell me we're close and getting there. How close are we on 185? I need 15 by the end of the program. Okay? 15 more, folks. Do me a favor. Hit the like list. Keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.